Alrighty, we are going to start. Boy, it's a little. Can you turn it down just a little bit? Yeah, I think it's where I'm standing. Okay. All right, we're going to start. I was going to have us do a lesson this morning in Galatians chapter 1 because I thought it'd be kind of good to need to go through that. But I changed my mind because I'm only doing this intermittently. So I'm just going to go over one that I did a while back, and it's a pretty interesting story. So I think we're going to do that. So go to 2 Kings chapter 22. And what this is going to be about is we're going to do a little comparison here between two kings. One is a good king, one is a bad king. One's from the north, one's from the south. And a little background here. The first king we're going to talk about is Josiah. And he was a king of the southern kingdom. And what happened in his time was that he had the kingdom, the southern kingdom, which was Judah, was not really following God. They were actually rebelled quite a bit. Okay, and his grandfather, his great grandfather actually, was a good king. Josiah's great grandfather was a good king. His name was Hezekiah. But his grandfather, which was Manasseh, was an evil king. Very bad king. And he ruled for, I'm going to say, 55 years, somewhere around there. And then his father was Amon, which was also an evil king, and he only reigned for 2 years. He reigned for 2 years because he was assassinated. So the story of Josiah is a neat one because it's unique because he grew up kind of in in a time that's similar to ours today. A lot of things that we consider right are now considered wrong. And that was a lot of what was going on back in his day. There wasn't a lot of direction. He didn't have the spiritual leadership of a father or anything like that to raise him. And it's just remarkable how he turned out without not having much instruction or direction and considering the time he lived in. So let's, and by the way, we're going to do, when I say do a comparison between these two kings, one from the north, one from the south, does anybody know how many good kings there were in the south? I think there were about 20 kings. There was about 8, I believe, that were good out of the 20. In the northern kingdom, do you know how many kings were good? It's really easy to remember this, 0. If you ever want to remember that, it's just 0. There were no good kings at all in the northern kingdom. Okay, so let's go to 2 Kings chapter 22, verse 1. It says, Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jediah, the daughter of Adiah of Boscath. So it's really easy to do the math here. He was 8 years old when he began to reign. It says he reigned for 31 years, which means he was 39 when he died. But that's a different story further on down. But he lived to be 39. And so he lived to be 39 years old. And it says that he took the throne at 8 years old, which is kind of amazing. I think AJ is older than this. I think AJ is like 11 or so. But could you imagine someone younger than AJ being your boss, being the king of the country? Pretty amazing. But it was thrust upon him because of what happened to his dad. His dad, Amon, was assassinated 2 years into his reign. And like I said, he was a very evil king. Josiah's grandfather was an evil king, Manasseh. And his great-great-grandfather, which he never got to know, Hezekiah, he was a good king. But like I said, Josiah had no instruction at all. He had no father to really raise him right. And he grew up in a very, very evil time. So chapter 22, verse 2 says, And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord. And he walked in all the way of David his father, and turned not aside to the right hand or to the left. So this is pretty amazing. I mean, when you actually think about it, that he had no instruction, no leadership. The kingdom was not following God at all. They rebelled. They had idols that they worshipped. And here this young boy at 8 years old says he didn't turn from the left or right. He stayed on path. Also, this is kind of interesting too, what we find out. We're not going to find out in this chapter, but we find out that at 16 years old, he dedicated his life to God. And I know that because you can go to 2 Chronicles 34, verse 1 through 3, and it says that. Because that's kind of like an extension of this story here. And I don't think I mentioned this, but Jeremiah is, from what we understood, wrote 2 Kings, okay? So it says in verse 3, and it came to pass in the 18th year of King Josiah, that doesn't mean he's 18, that means his 18th year of reign, okay? Which means if he's on the throne, he was 8, and it's the 18th year, that makes him 26 years old, okay? So he's now 26 years old, that the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam, the scribe, to the house of the Lord, saying, go up to Hilkiah the high priest, that he may sum the silver which is brought into the house of the Lord, when the keepers of the door and gathered of the people, and let them deliver it into the hand of the doers of the work that have the oversight of the house of the Lord, and let them give it to the doers of the work which is in the house of the Lord, to repair the breaches of the house, unto carpenters and builders and masons, and to buy timber and hewn stone to repair the house. Howbeit there was no reckoning made with them of the money that was delivered into their hand, because they dealt faithfully. Okay, and all that says in that wording is just that Josiah has moved for some reason. He made this commitment at 16 years old, and now he's moved in his 20s that he wants to, 26, that he wants to go in and get the temple brought up to standard, because they just let it go. They let it go. So he summons Hilkiah the high priest and to get a bunch of men in there and to go in there, clean it up, and then find out what all needs to be done, do a survey what needs to be done in the temple, and give the money to the carpenters, the masons, and all those men, builders, and let them go ahead and build it. And it says in the end of that verse there, it says, what it means, it says, and there was no reckoning made with them of the money that was delivered into their hand, because they dealt faithfully. What it's saying there, the Bible's telling us, is that those men were honest men, that when they gave the money to these builders, they could trust them because they were faithful people. They don't have to worry about them taking care of the accounting. They're going to do right with the money. So that's where we're at this point. So it's amazing how Josiah is, for some reason, moved to do this. Let's go to... Well, I just mentioned this. He's moved to do all this, and what we're not told yet, but we're going to find out, is that there are altars in the temple. Not altars to God, there's altars to all these pagan gods. And Josiah at this point has not been moved to do anything about it, because he doesn't know any better. He's only know what he's been taught, and he hasn't been taught much. So let's go to verse 8. And Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and he brought the king word again. And I'll stop right there. So what happened here is that Hilkiah the high priest, he comes to Shaphan and says, hey, I'm cleaning this up, and look, I found the book of the law. Now this is the book, it was probably the first 5 books of the Old Testament we have. The Pentateuch is probably what it was. And there's some references I read up. I didn't write them down right now, but they're in Deuteronomy. But they were supposed to keep the book of the law right there by the altar. And from what we understand when you read Deuteronomy, this was probably the original script they had, but we're not sure. And it probably wasn't a book. It's probably a scroll. But can you imagine in there, you're dusting things off, and, oh, look, I found a book. And you blow the dust off, and come to find out, oh, it's a book of the law. So, okay, so verse 9 again. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and he brought the king word again, and he said, thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house, and have delivered it into the hand of them that do the work, that have the oversight of the house of the Lord. And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest hath delivered me a book, and Shaphan read it to him. So what he's saying there, he says, we went into the temple, we did everything you asked us to do. We got it cleaned up, we gave them the money, the carpenters and the builders, and they went ahead and constructed and built the house. Oh, and by the way, we found this book. So that's kind of the order he told them things in, which means the book was lost because they found it. All right. Let's go to verse 11. And it came to pass when the king had heard the words of the book of the law that he rent his clothes. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest and Ahikam the son of Shaphan and Akbar the son of Micaiah and Shaphan the scribe and Isaiah a servant of the king, saying, Go ye, inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all Judah concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that kindleth against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book to do according unto all that which was written concerning us. So Josiah, this book is read to him, and he rents his clothes because he realizes what's being read to him is in Deuteronomy and in these other books is all the promises that God gave Israel if they obeyed him, and also the curses if they did not follow him. And he's going through and they're reading all this, and he's going, he knows what's in the temple. He knows there's altars to other gods in there. He knows all this stuff is going on, and he's done nothing to stop it. And he's going, guys, this is us. So he's really upset about it. And verse 14, this is what he instructs the priest to do. To go talk to the high priest. So Hilkiah the priest and Ahikam the Akbar and Shaphan and Isaiah went unto Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the son of, now I'm getting all these words right, believe it or not, I think I am, the son of Arhas, keeper of the wardrobe. And it's in parentheses. Actually, it's in parenthetical brackets there. Actually, no, it's not. What is it called? Parentheses. Yeah, parenthetical brackets. It says, now she dwelt in Jerusalem in the college, and they communed with her. So he wants them to go, this prophetess, and talk to her. Okay? Okay. So, let's read verse 15. And she said unto them, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Tell the man that sent you to me, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon this place and upon the inhabitants thereof, even all the words of the book which the king of Judah hath read. Because they have forsaken me, and have burned incense unto other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands. Therefore my wrath shall be kindled against this place, and shall not be quenched. But to the king of Judah, which is Josiah, which sent you to inquire of the Lord, thus shall ye say to him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, as touching the words which thou hast heard, because thine heart was tender, and thou hast humbled thyself before the Lord, when thou heardest that I spake against this place and against the inhabitants thereof, that they should become a desolation and a curse, and hast rent thy clothes and wept before me, I also have heard thee, saith the Lord. Behold, therefore, I will gather thee to thy fathers, and thou shalt be gathered into the grave in peace, and thine eyes shall not see all the evil which I will bring upon this place. And they brought the king word again. So what the message God gave this prophet to tell him is that there's going to be judgment coming, and there's no stopping it. But because Josiah had a heart and listened, inquired of the Lord, it's pretty neat how this says, this phraseology says, because Josiah heard me, I'm going to hear him. And he's going to save Josiah and his family. They're not going to go through this. So what's interesting about this is that Josiah knows there's nothing that's going to stop this judgment. And it kind of is parallel a little bit to today, like the world we live in. We know that judgments come into the world. We know we've gone pretty far from where we used to be as far as morals go. And, would we, knowing that judgment's coming, do we still go out and try to tell others and try to convert them, or do we just keep it to ourselves? Well, Josiah didn't do that. He didn't keep it to himself. He decided to take action. He could have just said, you know what? I've been faithful. I follow God. He says he's going to take care of me and my family. This judgment's coming no matter what. There's no stopping it. Let's just keep it to ourselves and live our lives and let God do what he's going to do. But he didn't do that. So let's go to, let's see if I want to go in this chapter. All right, let's go to chapter 23. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests, and the prophets, and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of the Lord. And the king stood by the pillar, verse 3, and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant. So he's being a great leader. He's bringing all the people to get them all together, and he's telling them, I'm going to make a promise, and I want you all to do it with me, that we're going to follow this book. No matter if judgment's coming or not, we're going to follow this book. And I want to see if I'm going to read verse 4 or not. Yeah, we'll read verse 4. Yep. Okay, so that's the first thing he does. Now, there's a few steps that Josiah does. And in verse 4, we're going to find out that the first thing he does is he cleanses the temple. Verse 4, and the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priests of the second order and the keepers of the door to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal and for the grove and for all the hosts of heaven, and he burned them without Jerusalem in those fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. So he's taken all of the altars that are not to God out of there. And in fact, they not only Baal, but I think the sun god, which is of Egypt, they had one of those in there. So he's taken all that out. He's instructing them to get all that out. And it's kind of a little symbolism or metaphor as far as the temple, because what is the temple today for us? It's our bodies, right? It's us, because the Holy Spirit lives in us. Back then, God was in the temple, but now he's in us with the Holy Spirit. So the first thing he does, instead of going outwardly and doing anything, is he gets his house right. He gets himself right. And that's what we're supposed to do too. And first, before we go pointing fingers and work on others, we need to make sure we get our lives cleaned out and work on ourselves first. And then it's easier to go to others. And that's the first thing he does. Yeah, it's kind of neat too, because they know what they're supposed to do when they read this book. And it must have been hard for some of those people to be willing to give up things that were their gods. And we all have those today. It could be something minor. It could be working out at a gym. Whatever you focus on and give your most attention to is your God, if you put it before God. It's okay to do those things, but if you're putting before the God, then they're just gods. And it's real easy when we hear things. Lots of times we'll read the Bible and we'll agree with a lot of what's in the Bible and say, yeah, I agree with that. That needs to be changed, needs to be changed. And then there's some things in our lives that we kind of compartmentalize and we're not sure we want to give up. And it's real easy for people to say, oh, I believe the Bible, but I don't know about that one. And that's where we get in the problem of instead of letting the Bible judge us, we judge the Bible. We pick out what we want. And I remember I read a Paul Jug's book years ago. It always caught my attention in the very beginning what he said. He said, religion is like a grocery store. You go in there, and it's one of two things. You either go into the grocery store and you pick the things you want and put the other things back you don't want or don't grab those, or religion is an antidote. And you may not like what you're getting, but it's good for you, and you're going to take it all in and accept it. Those are the two religions of the world. So it must have been very hard for these people to do it, but they made an oath that they were going to stick by it, and they're going to stick by Josiah. So let's go to, and also talking about the Bible judging our hearts, you can go to Hebrews if you want some time to read Hebrews 4, verse 12, because it says the Bible is not only a mirror, but it judges the hearts and minds of the people. So it's supposed to judge us, not us judge it. All right, verse 5. And he put down the idolatrous priest whom the king of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the city of Judah and in the places round about Jerusalem. Them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the hosts of heaven. So what he's doing now is he done working on himself in themselves in the temple. Now he's doing the next step. He's getting rid of all the bad influences. Because those priests and what they've practiced, he knows if he doesn't get rid of them, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, and the people are never going to change. So he knows that he's got to get rid of the priest. Verse 6. No, I don't want to read verse 6. Let's skip 6. Okay, go to verse 8, because we're running out of time. We'll go to verse 8. And he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense from Geba to Beersheba, and break down the high places of the gates that were in the entering in the gate of Josiah, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city. All it's saying there is that he took the priest out of there, and two things happened. He took the priest out of there, and he also defiled those altars. And what that means there is that he put human bones on those altars, because that was a desecration, and that meant altars could not be used anymore. So now what he's doing is he's saying, not only did we take care of what we need personally, what we need to, and with ourselves and with the temple, now we get rid of the bad influences of our lives. You could have friends or someone that may steer you wrong. You need to get them out of your lives because they're not going to help you. Now the third step is we're never going back there. We're putting these bones on these altars so they can never be used again. That way we're never going back to that sin. And that's what we need to do sometimes too. Sometimes there might be a pet sin that we have that's hard to get rid of. You just need to put things in a place to help you to not go back to those places. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect, but those are just tools you can use like Josiah did. Verse 9, nevertheless, so he took out the priests, and nevertheless the priests of the high places came not up to the altar of the Lord, in Jerusalem, but they did eat of the unleavened bread among the brethren. So what Josiah did is he says, you're not going to work here anymore, but I'm not going to let you starve. You can still eat the unleavened bread, but that's it. That's your only influence you're going to have. That's the only thing you're going to be doing as far as you're not going to be doing any work in the temple. All right. So we're not going to read 10, verse 10 and 14. I'm just going to tell you real quickly, just summarize it so we're out of time here. But he makes all the altars unusable he goes out to other places where altars are, the high places, where Solomon had temples built. His wives influenced him on that. And he went out and he desecrates all of those. So let's go to verse 15. Verse 15, let's see. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel and the high places which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, he made both that altar and the high place that brake down, and burned the high places, and stamped it all to small, to powder, and burned the grove. Okay, verse 16. And Josiah turned himself, he spied the sepulchres. We're going to stop right here for a second because I want to explain something. When it says Bethel in 15, we'll read that again. Moreover, the altars that were at Bethel. So now what he's done is, remember, Josiah's in the southern kingdom. He's now going up to the northern kingdom, okay, Bethel. And he's going up there, and he's taking the show on the road. He's going into a place that's not his area, and he's now going to influence that place. And he's going to take care of the altars over there. Verse 16, and it says, and Josiah turned himself, he spied the sepulchres that were in the mount, and took the bones out of the sepulchres and burned them upon the altar. He's basically taken some of these old priests' bones that were there, and he's burning them on these altars. Okay, and polluted it according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. So evidently, the whole reason why Josiah is doing this now is because it was prophesied he would do this. It's prophesied that he would go up into the northern kingdom, he would go to this altar, and he would desecrate it. Then, verse 17, then he said, what title is this that I see? And he's looking at a grave, a sepulcher. And he sees a title, he sees a name on it. And the men of the city told him, "It is the sepulchre of the man of God which came from Judah and proclaimed these things that thou hast done against the altar of Bethel." So this grave, they're telling him, this is the man that prophesied you were going to come up here 300 years ago, almost, I would say 290 or maybe 300 years ago, prophesied that you were going to come up to the northern kingdom and you were going to do this. This is his grave. Verse 18, and Josiah said, "Let him alone. Let no man move his bones." So they let his bones alone, with the bones of the prophet that came out of Samaria. So there was actually this man of God, his bones were there, that prophesied this was going to happen. And there was some other bones in there from another prophet from Samaria. And he says, leave them alone. Okay. We're going to stop right there. And like it says, we're comparing two kings. So now we are going to go to, we're going to go to 1 Kings chapter 13. 1 Kings chapter 13. Okay. So, summarize, we've got Josiah, a man who had no instruction to follow God, had no fathers or grandfathers or anyone, men to teach him right, didn't even have the Bible. He had no scripture, no Bible, nothing, and he still, amazingly, in his heart, wanted to serve God. He made a commitment when he was 16, and then he went and led his country right, which is really amazing. It's remarkable. The second king that we're talking about here is the king. He was the king of the northern kingdom. Okay? And his name is Jeroboam. A little background on Jeroboam. Okay. Also, the author of this is probably Jeremiah. No one knows for 100% sure, but most likely it was Jeremiah. It was written approximately 300 years earlier, probably. That's when the event took place. I'm not sure when it was written, but this event takes 300 years earlier. Rehoboam was the son of Solomon, and remember, that was the southern kingdom. And Rehoboam, for making very bad decisions, taking bad advice. In fact, we don't have time to get in it, but he had a choice between advisors. He could have had the elders that were there from Solomon and taken their advice, but he chose not to. He wanted to go with the young contemporary guys and brought them in, and he followed their advice. And their advice was tax the people, so what? Well, there's a lot of things. But Rehoboam didn't rule very well. And because of the way he ruled and rebelled and didn't follow the promises that God asked him to follow, he had the kingdom stripped away from him, actually ripped away from him. And at the same time that was going on, before that actually happened, there was this other man. His name is Jeroboam. And he was more of a servant. He had some other positions. I don't remember exactly what they were. But he wasn't the line of David. He was not the line of David. But God came to him through a prophet and told him, this is what I'm going to do, Jeroboam. I'm going to make, because Rehoboam has done what he's doing, I'm going to make you king. And I'm going to rip away the kingdom from Rehoboam, except for Judah. Yeah. So you're going to be the king, and he made these promises. You can read it. I think it's in chapter 12, if I'm not sure. But basically what's given to Jeroboam is, if you do all these things I ask you to do, you will have a dynasty like King David's, and your family will reign and reign and reign and reign and reign. Boy, you talk about having something handed to you on a silver platter, huh? But unfortunately, what happens before we start reading this is that Jeroboam starts to thinking. And he goes, every year, at least once a year, maybe more often than that, everybody's got to go down to Judah, and they've got to go to the temple and worship and all that. And he got to thinking, King Solomon's temple is really nice. It's really beautiful down there in Judah. And if these people from my kingdom start going down there and they see that, they may want to stay down there. So he thinks, let me come up with my own religion so they don't have to go down there and worship. They can just stay up here and worship up here. So he comes up with his own religion. And he starts picking people to be priests that shouldn't be priests. I guess if he's a friend of the king, you become a priest. I don't know. But he just started picking his own people. So that's kind of where we're at. And they have their own religion. They're doing their own kind of worship, not to God. And they have these altars. And so let's read verse 1 in chapter 13. And behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel. Let me stop right there. Remember what we read, and that's Josiah. That's what this is talking about. 300 years in the future. And that's not Josiah. It's Josiah when he asks who's in the grave. This is that man of God. Okay. It says, and behold, there came a man of God out of Judea. This is that prophet that was buried that Josiah saw in the grave. By the word of the Lord unto Bethel, said he would come there. And Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. So here, Jeroboam's caught red-handed. He's right at the altar doing his sacrifice, burning incense on it. And this man from the south, that is what we read earlier, that's dead in the grave. This is 300 years earlier. He came from Judah. He came up here, and he comes to the altar, and he sees Jeroboam doing this, putting incense on the altar. And this is what he says, verse 2. And he cried against the altar. This is the man of God. And he cried against the altar in the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon this. So this is that man of God that prophesied that Josiah would do this. And it must have been a weird situation to see this man crying out to the altars, talking to an altar. Oh, altar, but he's saying that. Verse 3, and he gave a sign the same day, saying, this is a sign which the Lord hath spoken. Behold, the altar shall be rent, and the ashes that are upon it shall be poured out. So what this man of God is saying is he says, Josiah, this man named Josiah is going to come. He's going to come and he's going to desecrate your altar, Jeroboam. And this is the sign that it's going to happen. This altar is going to be rent and the ashes is going to be poured out. This is the sign that's going to prove my prophecy. And this is Jeroboam's response. That's a warning, by the way. That's a warning given to Jeroboam what's going to happen. And verse 4, and it came to pass when King Jeroboam heard the saying of the man of God, which had cried against the altar in Bethel, that he put forth his hand from the altar, saying, lay hold on him. And his hand which he put forth against him dried up. It kind of withered, I guess, or dried up, so that he could not pull it again to him. So instead of saying, oh man, we've sinned, and turning back to God, he says, seize this man, the God. At the same time, in verse 5, the altar also was rent, and the ashes poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given him. So now, not only is his hand withered, which is a miracle, but the sign that he said that this altar would be rent and the ashes would pour out, that's going to come true, showing that my prophecy is going to come true. So here you have a miracle, that's a warning also. And you also have the prophecy come true about the warning, the prophecy about the altar being rent and the ashes poured out. And the king answered and said unto the man of God, this is what Jeroboam said, entreat now the face of the Lord thy God, and pray for me that my hand may be restored me again. And the man of God besought the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him again. And it became as it was before. So now you get another supernatural miracle happening. Now he heals his hand. All these signs for Jeroboam to adhere to and go, oh man, I better listen. Okay, so next in verse 7, and the king, Jeroboam, said unto the man of God, come home with me, and refresh thyself, and I will give thee a reward. And the man of God said unto the king, if thou wilt give me half thine house, I will not go in with thee, neither will I eat bread nor drink water in this place. For so it was charged me by the word of the Lord, saying, eat no bread, nor drink water, nor turn again by the same way that ye camest. So he went another way and returned not by the way that he came to Bethel. So the king's saying, hey, I'm glad, thank you for doing that. And now that we're good, why don't you come home and have dinner with me? Instead of repenting and saying, you're right, let me get rid of the temple, let me get rid of the altars, he just says, hey, now that we're good, come home with me. And the man of God says, God told him not to. But not only does he say that, he says, I'm not to drink with you, I'm not to do this with you. He even goes, he kind of doubles down on why he's not going to go with them. He's a pretty confident prophet that he's not going to go against what God says. Okay, so he went another, and he also did what God told him to do. He went another way. He didn't go back the way he came, this man of God. Verse 11. Okay. I think we'll get through this, but I want to say this. In verse 11, we get kind of a weird story. And when you read this, you kind of go, okay, why is this in here? Because it seems like it's coming out of left field. But we're going to read through verse 11. Let me make sure I'm able to get through this. Yeah, okay. So we're going to read verse 11, but I want to put a few definitions on it so we don't get confused. In verse 11, we're going to read about an old prophet, and we're going to read about this prophet we've just been talking about, this man of God. And most of the time it says man of God, so you'll know who it is. And sometimes it'll say old prophet, you'll know it's this new prophet that's on the scene. And whenever it doesn't, I'm just going to try to remember to say man of God or old prophet so we don't get these confused. But, okay, so let's read verse 11. Now there dwelt an old prophet in Bethel. I wasn't going to stop, but I want to say this. Okay, notice it says this prophet was in Bethel. Makes you wonder why God had to get a prophet, a man of God, in the southern kingdom to come all the way up there to tell Jeroboam these things when there's a prophet right here. But it is what it is, and God has his way of doing things. Now there dwelt an old prophet in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the works that the man of God had done, making Jeroboam's hand freeze up or dry up, healing it, rending the altar, the ashes falling out, and then proclaiming what he said would happen 300 years from now. And his sons tell this old prophet all these amazing things. And their father said unto them, what way went he? For his sons had seen what way the man of God went, which came from Judah. And he said unto his sons, saddle me the ass. So they saddled him the ass, and he rode therein, and went after the man of God, and found him sitting under an oak. And as he said unto him, art thou the man of God that camest from Judah? And he said, I am. Then said he unto him, come home with me, and eat bread. And the man of God said, I may not return with thee, nor go in with thee. Neither will I eat bread nor drink water with thee in thy place. For it was said to me by the word of the Lord, thou shalt eat no bread nor drink water there, nor turn again to go by the way that thou hast camest. He said unto him, I am a prophet also. And this is the old prophet now, his response. The old prophet said unto him, I am a prophet also, as thou art. And the angel spake unto me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with thee into thine house, and he may eat bread and drink water. But he lied to him. So this old man prophet just lied. And we know that because we know the story. Okay. Verse 19, so he went back with him and did eat bread at his house and drank water. All right, verse 20, and it came to pass as they sat at the table that the word of the Lord came unto the old prophet that brought him back. And he cried unto the man of God. This is the old prophet. He's crying. God reveals to the old prophet a message. And now the old prophet's crying, and he's going to give the message to this man of God. Thus saith the Lord, for as much as thou hast disobeyed the mouth of the Lord, and hast not kept the commandment which the Lord thy God commanded thee, but camest back, and hast eaten bread and drunk water, in the place of which the Lord did say to thee, eat no bread and drink no water, Thy carcass shall now come unto the sepulchre of thy fathers. And it came to pass, after he had eaten bread, and after he had drunk, that he saddled for him the ass, to wit, for the prophet from whom he had brought back. And when he was gone, this is talking about the man of God, when he was gone, a lion met him by the way and slew him, and his carcass was cast into the way, and the ass stood by it. The lion also stood by the carcass. Verse 25, and behold, men passed by and saw the carcass cast in the way, and the lion standing by the carcass, and they came and told it in the city where the old prophet dwelt. Think of how amazing this is, that the lion meets him on the path and kills him, but the lion's just there and he's not eating the carcass, and it's like a miracle for the lion just to sit there and not do that. And when the prophet that brought him back, the old prophet, okay, when the old prophet heard thereof, he said, it is the man of God who was disobedient unto the word of the Lord. Therefore the Lord hath delivered him unto the lion, which hath torn him and slain him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake unto him. And he spake to his son, saying, saddle me the ass. And they saddled him. And he went and found his carcass and cast it in the way, and the ass and the lion standing by the carcass. The lion had not eaten the carcass nor torn the ass. So there's a donkey there too. And the lion's not doing anything to the donkey, and the donkey's not running away. So this is like another miracle here. Verse 29, and the prophet took up the carcass of the man of God, and he laid it upon the ass and brought it back. And the old prophet came to the city to mourn and to bury him. And we'll stop right there for a second. Okay, what? Why is this all in here? Well, it's in here for a few reasons, I guess. But it's amazing how this prophet lied. This old man prophet lied. And you think, why did he lie? I don't know. Maybe he was starstruck. He probably heard the miracles that this man of God did, and just wanted to have some time with him because he probably looked up to him. Probably heard, maybe there's other stories he heard about him, but he seemed to be starstruck. So much that he lied to him and told him God told him, brought an angel and told him to come home with him. So now, and think of this. So you've got this lion and you've got this donkey standing there, and the lion's not trying to eat the donkey's not running away, the carcass is there, the lion's not touching it. It's like another supernatural thing going on. Another warning sign for Jeroboam, because you mark my word, he's going to get a message of this. Okay, let's read verse 30, and this is the old man prophet. And he laid his carcass in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, alas, my brother. And we'll stop right there, because what you can go on and read, but what you're going to find out is Jeroboam in verse 33, he continues to sin. He does not return. He does not repent. So he gets all these warnings. His hand feels, he's warned of a prophecy that's going to happen. He's warned that the altar is going to be rent and the ashes are going to be turned upside down. All those things happen. He's warned when his hand is withered and then his hand is healed. He's given another sign. Then he hears, you mark my word, he got messages. I can sure at some point messages come back to King Jeroboam and they say, hey, Jeroboam, yeah, you know that man of God that came to you? Yeah, the one that told you what was going to happen and it happened? The one that prophesied that 300 years in the future that this was all going to be torn down? Yeah. The one that you asked to come home and eat dinner with you and he didn't? Yeah. The one that made your hand wither and then healed it? Yeah. Well, he didn't adhere to God and listen to God. And he's a man of God. And because he did that, he was killed on the side of the road. But all those warnings, and Jeroboam does not repent at all. And you can read on in chapter 14, talks about his demise and what happens to him. But it's just amazing because you have these two kings. And like it says, in the north, there were, as far as kings that were good, it was 0. It's real easy to remember. 0 good kings in the north. And I think there was like 8 in the south that were good. But you have Josiah, who had no instruction, had no Bible, had no men to lead him and teach him right, whereas and was living in a bad time. And you had Jeroboam, who had a prophet. The word of God came to him, told him what to do, instructed him, and everything fell in his lap. He had this opportunity, and he was starting off afresh, so everything was going to be good and right. And the two men took totally different paths on how they handled everything. So I thought it'd just be an interesting comparison, go over that. And some of that applies. It's real easy to read the Bible sometimes and just nod our heads at some of the things these people do. But this is supposed to be a mirror for us. And so we are supposed to look at this and realize that we do minor things like that in our lives too, where we don't always obey and do what's right. Anyway, so we're done. We're going to pray and we'll close this out. Dearly Father, thank you for the message.